It's time to set those winning lineups for your fantasy playoffs in week 15. So we're going to do, as we do, go over every matchup and talk about the wide receivers that matter the most. Now, there are some guys you're going to have to play no matter what because they are that good. These are the must starts at receiver: Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Stephon Diggs, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, and Jamar Chase. The week will kick off on Thursday night with the Chargers at the Raiders. We're going to talk about that wide receiver core and what is going to happen now without Justin Herbert. But before we do that, I'll tell you one thing. Austin Eckler is probably going to get a yard, and that's good for you if you're new to Underdog because right now they have a new customer special, believe it or not. Austin Eckler, just go higher than 0.5 total yards, and that's their gift to you just for signing up for Underdog. Make sure that you use promo code ENDGAME because in addition to that free pick, you also get a 100% deposit match up to $100. That's right, whatever you put in, you're going to get it back up to that limit, and then also that free pick for this week. So check it out right now, download the app, or click the link in the description below. Now in that Chargers-Raiders matchup, Keenan Allen is someone we really have to discuss because you can't not just flat out start him with Easton Stick at quarterback, but can you bench him?
I don't think you have to bench him. I mean, he had a decent game, right? He got some targets down the stretch there with Easton Stick. I can't believe I'm saying that. But you can't feel great about him either, so... But I think he's still at least, a good start this week.
It was getting a little scary, and I say that as someone who has way too much both Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert in fantasy this year. But he did come through with at least decent numbers. He's going to get peppered with targets. He's probably going to be the security blanket for Easton Stick. I think he's still at least a decent start. And actually, I think the more surprising thing here was that Quentin Johnston had his best game of the season because immediately when Stick came in, it seemed like they had a connection, got that deep ball. He was throwing it his way. Could this actually be good for QJ?
I mean, it might be good for him, but you want to find that out in your fantasy lineup in the playoffs? I don't. Let me see a full game of Easton Stick before I feel good enough about Quentin Johnston. I'm not starting him.
Oh, no, I'm not either. I'm going to lean more towards that was a fluky thing more than anything. They probably just weren't accounting for him because they didn't expect Easton Stick to throw it deep. So, yeah, I'm not starting QJ. Now, what about Devontae Adams on the other side?
Yeah, did not boom in a spot I expected him to boom. This is another great matchup at home against the Chargers. I think you got to roll with him again this week.
Yeah, pretty much you have Devontae Adams. You still want to start him. Did not expect that Vikings-Raiders game to just basically be a black hole for offense and nobody to score at all. So I think they'll be better. Chargers defense is still bad. So you got Adams. You should start him. What about Jacoby Myers, though?
Yeah, I'm still not feeling Jacoby Myers, even against the Chargers. I'm going to sit him.
Agree. Maybe he does a little something more, but too much at stake this week to trust and hope that Myers does something, so probably should sit him. Now on Saturday, first game is going to be the Vikings at the Bengals. Wish I had more good things to say about this game, but Justin Jefferson is going to be in doubt here. We all saw what happened as he left early just after he came back. So let's hope JJ plays. If he does, are you going to just put him back in your lineup?
I think you mostly have to. I mean, you can't feel good. It's probably going to be Nick Mullins, got to think at this point. So, but still, he's Justin Jefferson. I think if he plays, for the most part, you're starting him.
Yeah, that's the whole other issue here is now we're talking about a third quarterback. Who knows? But only because it's Justin Jefferson. If he's good to go and he's clear, you're probably playing him. What about Jordan Addison, though? That feels way too risky.
Yeah, way too risky in your playoffs. No chance.
And then T. Higgins made an appearance. Actually got a nice downfield, big play. Got more yards than Jamar Chase last week. Is Jake Browning now a good thing for T. Higgins?
I mean, he might be, but I still am not ready to trust T. Higgins. I mean, if you absolutely have to start him, you can, but I don't want to.
I will say I feel better about him, but I don't feel good about him. It's not a bad matchup. They're at home. Browning looks good, but to me, he's just a flex option. Steelers taking on the Colts in Indy. Here's an offense you probably can't feel great about. Pittsburgh with Mitch Trubisky. Let's start with Deontay Johnson.
I mean, he keeps scoring at least, but what is the upside here, really? I mean, if you need him, you can start him, but that's it.
Yeah, he actually has been scoring touchdowns, but I'm not going to rely on that. I think he's startable. He's got some sort of a floor, but just don't love him this week. Do you love George Pickens?
No, I mean, how can you love George Pickens after last week? No way I could start George Pickens.
I could even say on paper, maybe this could be a matchup, a chance where he does take advantage. It doesn't matter. He's done nothing now for like a month, not getting the targets, not getting the right kind of usage. You just have to keep him on your bench. And then for Indy, Michael Pittman, sure, set forget. Josh Downs, though, same thing. I keep feeling like he should do better, and it's just not happening for him.
Exactly. I think at this point, you said Michael Pittman's a set and forget. I think at this point, Josh Downs is just kind of a forget. I can't start him this week.
Yeah, I think he's got a bright future next year. Maybe good things when Anthony Richardson comes back. But for right now, you just can't start Downs. Denver going to Detroit. So let's start with Cortland Sutton. Just start him and take the touchdown he's probably going to give you.
Exactly. And it's a great matchup against this Lions defense. They've been horrible lately. The secondary's been horrible. Yeah, I think if you got Sutton for the most part, just start him.
Even though you say the yardage isn't great and the ceiling might not be super high, at this point, I'll just take the consistency, just knowing he's probably going to get me double digits. So if I have Sutton, I feel pretty good just starting him. And then Jerry Jeudy almost had a touchdown last week, but couldn't keep his foot in bounds. Is Jerry Jeudy playable because of this matchup you mentioned?
No, I mean, no way. You have to be beyond desperate. I cannot start Jerry Jeudy.
Agreed. Jerry Jeudy really shouldn't have been starting at all this year for anybody, so let's not start now. And then for Detroit, Jameson Williams is still the number 2 guy there. Could he do something here because, well, they're at home? I don't know. Worth a flyer?
I mean, he can always do something, and he can always do absolutely nothing. Again, it's your fantasy playoffs. This is what you want? This is the guy you want in your lineup? No, thank you.
No, exactly. There are dart throws out there. He's one of them. He's not my favorite. Falcons taking on the Panthers this week. Let's talk Drake London coming off a monster game. Now against Carolina. Is this a guy that you feel like you have to start?
No, I don't feel like you have to start him. I liked him last week at home against the Bucs, but this is on the road where Desmond Ridder typically doesn't play as well. The Panthers just play so slow. This game is going to be very slow, probably low scoring. I think Drake London's okay if you need him, but that's about it.
Exactly. A lot of people say, well, how can you sit him after what you just did? Road versus home, but also remember, the Bucs are pretty much a pass funnel defense. Carolina's a run funnel defense. Their run defense is the worst in the NFL. Falcons probably won't need to pass as much, so I think London is startable, but I just don't feel like he's due for a big game. On the other side, Adam Thielen had a little bit of a bounce back game. Is he startable, though?
No, I mean, he still had less targets than Jonathan Mingo. And, what is the upside here, really? And the downside is he kills you. Falcons not a bad defense either, so not starting Adam Thielen.
Exactly. I think at this point, we just want to be out on this whole passing offense. So I wouldn't want to start Thielen. And I know Mingo has been more involved. I know he'll get some yardage, but still, there's almost no touchdown upside here. I don't think I can start Mingo either.
No, look, I like Mingo, but not this year. Not starting him.
Chicago Bears going to take on the Cleveland Browns here in Cleveland. Let's start with Amari Cooper. You felt like he might have a nice game. He did get a lot of targets, got decent yardage. Can he do it against Chicago this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as good of a matchup. The Jaguars are more of a pass funnel. Bears do have a decent secondary, but man, 14 targets. He's got Joe Flacco. They're at home. I think Amari Cooper's a good start this week.
Agree. I think we have to be back in Cooper now that he's got the gunslinger, the veteran Flacco back there. And I'll tell you this, Chicago's defense has been better. This is not a smash spot. I don't think Cooper's going to carry you this week, but I think he's definitely startable. And I will say this, right now, you look at underdog and those pick'ems, as I mentioned earlier, the early line here, 49.5 yards receiving. that feels way too low. So if I'm making a pick right now early in the week, he's going to be one at receiver I'm taking for sure. Going higher than 49.5 yards. And if you are new and you haven't done these pick'ems yet on Underdog, you get that freebie I already mentioned for the Thursday night game with Eckler getting 1 yard, and you combine it with this pick. That is a good chance right there to win triple your very first entry. Just make sure if you are new, you sign up, use that promo code ENDGAME because it also gets you that deposit match. And Elijah Moore had been getting targeted a bunch, but took a backseat. Definitely did not break out last week. Is this week any better?
Probably not. I mean, if Cooper's healthy and Flacco's playing, I can't feel great about Elijah Moore. Not starting him.
I should know better. He's one of those guys that every time I'm back in, then he lets me down. So I just won't go there. Just don't start Elijah Moore. Green Bay taking on Tampa Bay in Lambeau Field this week. Let's talk Chris Godwin. I mean, the targets did come back for him, but it still wasn't even a great result. Do we have to be out on Godwin at this point?
We gotta be. I mean, he got the squeaky wheel treatment, right? His wife tweeted that thing out, and the Bucs are like, fine, here's 11 targets. Oh, you did nothing with them? Yeah, I'm out on Chris Godwin.
So weird, because he is such a good receiver, and the opportunity's there. I blame Baker Mayfield, but either way, it doesn't matter. Godwin's just not producing. I don't think you can trust him for your playoffs. Now for the Packers, you know the drill. Christian Watson, hurt, did not play in Week 14. What if he comes back for Week 15? Are you going to go there?
This is going to be tough because it's such a good matchup at home against the Buccaneers, but it always comes down to how healthy is he. Like, is he practicing fully all week? Is he not on the injury report? Then yeah, I'm starting him. Is he barely practicing, on the injury report where I'm worried he might only play 40, 50% of the snaps? Then I'm probably sitting him.
I really wish I could just be in on Watson. I mean, like I said, this is such a good spot. Green Bay was not overly impressive this past week against the Giants, but that was on the road. Going back home against this Tampa secondary, like if Watson is a full go, I still think I want to play him because that's kind of upside you want in the playoffs. Now, if Watson doesn't go, or if he's limited, or if he does, either way, let's talk Jaden Reed. Did score a touchdown last week. Do you think he is still a solid start?
Yeah, it's a good matchup. Like you said, he can score. He gets carries like around the goal line, which is kind of nice. So against the Bucs, I think he's still, at least a decent start.
Yeah, Jaden Reed is one of those players. He's in a pretty good situation. I feel like he's got a decent floor. I like the fact, like you said, he's been used in the running game. Tampa Bay is just almost too good spot to ignore. So I won't go higher than a flex option, but I think he's a really solid flex option. Now, Romeo Doubs, on the other hand, I don't know. I just don't think there's enough targets heading his way.
Nah, this is touchdown or bust. You should do better this week, not starting him.
Jets at Dolphins, part 2. Let's talk Garrett Wilson. Nice game with Zach Wilson at quarterback. Is this going to lead to more trust in Garrett Wilson? You're going to start him in Week 15 for sure?
Yeah, I definitely think he's startable. I mean, he's not a must start or anything. He still doesn't have a massive ceiling, I don't feel like. But at least with Zach Wilson, he's startable. I think he's at least a solid start this week.
Yeah, I'm not buying all the way into the Zach Wilson stat line from last week. But we know that Garrett Wilson gets targeted so much, especially with Zach at QB. So I think I can go as high as maybe put him in the low end wide receiver 2 range because they're going to have to pass it a lot this week. And the other side, Jalen Waddle against the Jets. Wasn't too bad last time these teams played.
I like him a lot this week. If you remember a couple weeks ago, I was saying, hey, this is a sneaky good Jalen Waddle spot, and he had a nice game. This is a sneaky good Jalen Waddle spot again, and now they're at home. I like Jalen Waddle this week.
Gotta like him most weeks. And again, the Jets matchup shouldn't scare you because they do clamp down on number 1 receivers, but not always number 2 receivers. So Waddle's still a strong start. Giants going to take on the Saints. I guess if there's a Giants receiver to talk about, it would be Jalen Hyatt because he seems to have the most upside. What do you think about Hyatt this week?
Yeah, not a great matchup on the road. I mean, really boom or bust here. I feel like you can do better this week. I'm not starting him.
Yeah, I'm really still not going to talk myself into any Giants receiver in the postseason for fantasy, so I'll just pass. And then for the Saints, Chris Olave, Despite illness, despite some injuries, still fighting and being productive. Still a strong start.
Yeah, I like Chris Olave a ton. At home against this Giants secondary, yeah, definitely start Chris Olave this week.
Agree. You got Olave. He's a guy you can just feel good about no matter what. Texans going to take on the Titans. It's going to be painful, but here we go. No Tank Dell, and now maybe no Nico Collins with that calf injury. If Nico does give it a go, you're going to trust him in the playoffs.
Man, this was such a good matchup too, but with the calf, re-aggravating the calf, how healthy is he? I mean, unless we hear that he's 100%, which seems like a no chance, I think I have to sit him. Plus, we don't even know if it's going to be C.J. Stroud, so I think I got to sit Nico.
Yeah, that's another good thing. I mean, if it's Davis Mills, I'm sorry. I'm just going to flat out say no to pretty much all the Texans receivers. If Stroud plays and Nico plays, I almost feel like I have to start him, but only if I know there's no limitations. So what about Noah Brown? If it's Davis Mills, I'm assuming you don't want to start him. What if it is C.J. Stroud?
I mean, even if it's C.J. Stroud, I mean, how good can we feel? I mean, I guess it's the Titans. If you absolutely need him, you can start him.
If Stroud does play, and if Nico doesn't play, I might go Noah Brown, but I still don't know if I would feel great about it. Then there's DeAndre Hopkins, still the number one guy for the Titans. At home, you feeling a big game?
I mean, they're at home. It's the Texans. It's not a horrible spot. I think if you need him, you can start him.
He's still shown that big play upside, got some touchdown potential. It's risky, but you know what? He's not the worst. I'd say as a maybe fringe number 3 receiver, I think he's okay. Chiefs at the Patriots. This is almost a contest to see which wide receiver room is worse. Let's start with the Chiefs. Rashee Rice, the number one guy there. You going to trust him in this matchup?
Yeah, I like him this week. I think this is a good spot for him. The Patriots play a lot of man defense. That's what he excels against. It's him and Travis Kelce. That's basically the only guys Patrick Mahomes trusts. So I like Rashee Rice this week.
Yeah, you got to like Rice because, well, another touchdown. We know he can always do something. I don't love the matchup. You know, New England, if nothing else, they've been limiting offenses for the most part, especially passing game. So I don't feel that's a big Rice week. I think he's just kind of a low-end wide receiver 3 also. And then there's the former Chief, Juju Smith-Schuster. Actually had a nice game, believe it or not. I think he got more yards in week 14 than he had in the entire season, something like that. Am I right on that?
Close. I think he had more yards than that on the season, but it was probably closer than people think. But I'm still not trusting Juju Smith-Schuster in my lineups.
I'm not either. I mean, Patriots, I don't even know if we have to run down every receiver for me to say, no, I am absolutely not trusting anybody catching passes from Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones or anybody in this offense. Juju is still a hard no. Now, Demario Douglas had been good at times. If he comes back from concussion and he plays, could you roll him out?
Nah, I mean, what's the upside here? This is your fantasy playoffs. You can do better. I'm not starting Demario Douglas.
Yeah, way too risky here. 49ers taking on the Cardinals. If it feels like a massive mismatch, it probably is. But let's start with the Niners offense. Are you starting Brandon Ayuk?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like pretty much every week you're just starting Brandon Ayuk and taking whatever you get.
Yeah, there's really no reason not to start Ayuk this week. Deebo Samuel, I feel like that's probably a yes too.
Yeah, the way he's playing right now, I think you got to start Deebo Samuel.
Hollywood Brown, different story. Coming off the bye, but last we saw left with a heel injury, been banged up a lot. Can you trust Brown in this matchup?
Got to see him get some full practices in. I'd like to see him not be on the injury report. Jonathan Gannon did say he expects him to practice this week, so I think if he goes, not a must start, but I think he's still a solid start.
He could be startable if you feel like he's healthy enough. Obviously, not a great matchup, but 49ers have given up some yardage, to receivers, number one guys specifically. He'd probably be the only receiver I might feel okay about in this game for Arizona, though. Now, I will talk about Greg Dortch just because what if Hollywood doesn't play? Is Dortch playable?
No, against the 49ers, I mean, again, it's your fantasy playoffs, not starting Greg Dortch.
Yeah, I agree. If it's not Hollywood, it's just got to be nobody. Commanders at Rams. Got a lot of guys to talk about here. Let's start with the Washington side. Terry McLaurin. Does he get more involved now after this team has had a week off to think about things?
I mean, he has to get more involved than 0 catches, but I mean, how good can you really feel here about Terry McLaurin? Like, if you need him, you can start him, but not a lot of upside.
Yeah, it's really odd that this offense somehow has gone away from McLaurin more this year. Don't know why. It's not a good spot for him. I really feel like I should put him in my lineup, but I really don't know if I can this week. So only if you really don't have anybody better. Then there's Curtis Samuel. He's technically been more productive this year, but do you really feel good about him?
I mean, no, you can't. You're just hoping for, playing from behind, throwing a bunch of passes, and then you're hoping it goes to Curtis Samuel and not starting him.
Yeah, I'll just be honest. I really would rather avoid the Commanders this whole week. I'm going to say probably no to Samuel unless you're in a really deep league. And then there's Jahan Dotson. I mean, I've already been there. Take a chance on him. He does nothing. I'm saying no to Dotson too.
Yeah, saying no to Dotson.
Now here come the yeses. Cooper Kupp. I mean, I don't think we can say you have to start him no matter what anymore, but I mean, you kind of have to start him here, don't you?
Yeah, this week against Commanders, you got to start him.
And then what about Puka Nacua?
Same thing. Against the Commanders, get him in your lineup.
Definitely. Let's go deeper. Demarcus Robinson, I mentioned on the waiver wire video, number 3 guy there, 2 straight games with a touchdown. Can you play him?
I mean, only if you have to, and only because it's the Commanders.
It is risky, obviously. I will say maybe a sneaky start, but again, don't get cute, only in a deep league. Cowboys taking on Buffalo. This is going to be a road game, so is Brandon Cooks going to be a strong enough consideration to flex this week?
No. I finally said, okay, Brandon Cooks, I got to put you in my lineup in a must-win game, and it didn't happen. And now on the road against the Bills, I'm going to sit Brandon Cooks this week.
Yeah, I guess that Philly just has his number. Didn't do anything either game against them, and not at home. Dallas is still a great offense, don't get me wrong, but just not as good. So I think he's streamable, but again, not my favorite pick. What about Gabe Davis coming off another goose egg?
I mean, yeah, we got to call this guy like Mr. Zero or something. I mean, how can you put this guy in your lineup? And this isn't a matchup where you think like, oh yeah, Gabe Davis week. No chance.
Yeah, I'll say throughout the season, there are times you say, yeah, take the risk, see if he does something, just know that he can give you 0. Are you willing to risk the 0 in the playoffs? You can't do it. The night game will be the Ravens at the Jaguars. This Baltimore pass offense was on fire last week. So let's talk about Zay Flowers. You feeling good about him week 15?
I mean, it's 2 straight good games for him. It was pretty nice to see. He had some like bad drops in that game, but then came through in the clutch. I don't feel like fantastic about him, like he's going to have a huge game, but I think he's at least a good start this week.
He's definitely got the upside. I think he's a pretty good start, especially because Jacksonville, although they've been solid defensively, have a lot of injuries still in the secondary with Tyson Campbell out. I think this Flowers is a pretty solid wide receiver 3 type, especially in full PPR. Now, what about Odell Beckham? I know he came off of a down week before the bye. We forgot he had a nice little stretch before then. Do we have to be back in on OBJ?
I mean, who knows? This guy right on any given week, who knows what you're going to get? It feels too risky for me. I mean, if you need to start him, you can, but a lot of risk here.
I've been burned here also because just when I was in on him against the Chargers, let me down, but now he bounced back. So I still think he has upside. I think this isn't the worst matchup for him. But again, this is only a streaming option if you're looking for that home run. And then who knows what we're getting from Calvin Ridley, but let's try to figure it out. At home against the Ravens, what do you think?
I mean, you can't feel good. Like, this is a tough matchup. He could boom, he could bust. You want to gamble on it, go for it. Start him if you need him.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Ridley. I can't say I feel this is going to be a Ridley week or no, you can't start him. At least we know Trevor Lawrence is playing, so that's good. Christian Kirk is out, but that didn't mean anything last week, did it? So just very risky flex option. Then there's Zay Jones. He actually led the team in targets last week, got a ton, but didn't catch most of them. Can you play Zay Jones?
Nah, in this matchup, very risky. I think you can do better. I'm not starting Zay Jones.
Well, I talked about him on the waiver wire video, and I said I'm probably not starting him this week, and you probably shouldn't need to. But look at the schedule ahead. You might want to keep him in mind for the next 2 weeks. But right now, here and now, I'll say no. Then there's Parker Washington, the rookie. Not a big game, but he did catch another touchdown. Is he any better?
Probably not. I mean, this is very, very risky. I'm not starting Parker Washington this week.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing I said about Zay Jones. This week, no. Next week, maybe. And then on Monday night, we got the Eagles taking on the Seahawks. Let's start with Devontae Smith. Still a solid start, I assume?
Yeah, against the Seahawks. I know he didn't have a great game last week. He fumbled, but you got to think this entire Eagles offense is bouncing back this week. I think Smith's still a good start.
Yeah, we kind of have to take the last couple of weeks with a grain of salt because they went up against basically two of the best teams in the entire league. Still put up decent numbers on offense. Devontae Smith, if I have him, I'm pretty much starting him. And then there's DK Metcalf. All right, so he didn't explode like the week before. He still managed to come through with a big play and a touchdown against the Niners. Let me ask you this. Does it matter if it's Drew Lock or Geno Smith at quarterback?
Yeah, it definitely matters because, look, you got that long touchdown on the first drive of the game. What'd you get the rest of the game? Exactly nothing. That's the problem with Drew Lock. If it's Geno Smith, I mean, DK Metcalf's a great start. It's the Eagles. It's a great matchup. If it's Drew Lock, I guess he's still startable because of the matchup.
I'd say still startable because not just the fact that we've seen what he can do, even with Drew Lock at quarterback, but look at this matchup. The Eagles, I don't think we have really appreciated how bad their pass defense has been lately. So DK Metcalf, I'm not subscribing to the start your studs no matter what and that he's one of them, but I'm starting DK Metcalf no matter what this week. What about Tyler Lockett? Still kind of involved, but where are those big ceiling games?
Yeah, I mean, technically, I feel like he was more involved than DK Metcalf last week. But again, if it's Drew Lock, I mean, barely startable because of the matchup. But if it's Geno Smith, I think he's a good start this week.
Agree completely. If it's Geno, I definitely feel better about Lockett. Feel great about the matchup. So I would start Lockett with Drew Lock. Very risky, like only if I have to. And let's end with Jackson, Smith, and Jigba.
I'm going to say the same thing. If it's Drew Lock, no thanks. If it's Geno Smith, I think you can start him if you need him.
Yeah, I'll put him a little peg below Lockett in the exact same scenario. So only if you really don't have anybody else. All right, those are all the wide receivers you need to know about for Week 15. Make sure you make the right decisions. Listen to our start sit advice for receiver. Also running back, quarterback, tight end. Everything you need to win in your fantasy playoffs. It's going to be right here in this playlist.